Hi everyone, my name is Gabriela Pastor, and my project is called Designing Against Information Overload in UX and UI Research. My major is Information Design and Technology, and for this project, I focus on how UX UI designers experience overload when analyzing large amounts of user data, which can make accessibility and important users' needs harder to prioritize during the design process. For this project, I explore how information is delivered within technology systems, how overwhelming interfaces affect users and designers, and how better information organization could improve accessibility and workflow efficiency. One major challenge in UX and UI design today is the overwhelming amount of information designers are expected to process. UX research collect data from interviews, usability testing, surveys, analytics, accessibility reports, and user feedback. And while all of this information is valuable, it can become difficult to organize and synthesize effectively. Through my research, I found that when designers become overloaded with information, important user insights may get lost, accessibility concerns may become the least priority, and decision making becomes way more difficult. This problem connects strongly to concepts of our course, such as design justice, accessibility, design code design, and user centered design. To better understand the human side of this issue, I spoke with a sociology professor about how people process large amounts of information and how overwhelming digital systems affect behavior and design making. One major concept we discussed was cognitive overload, which happens when people are exposed to more information that they effectively process at once. During the interview, the professor explained that too much information gives a hard time gathering their thoughts, and that people often rely on shortcuts and heuristics to make sense of overwhelming situations. The professor also explained that while shortcuts help reduce mental effort, they can cause people to lose the final idea or overlook important details. This connects directly to UX UI design because designers are often expected to process like a lot of data at once. And while we discuss how people engage with information differently, depending on how it is framed and organized, the professor explained that user interaction with information through their own cognitive framework, meaning that the structure and presentation of information directly affect attention, understanding, and decision making. And during our discussion, commercial interfaces such as Amazon were referenced as examples of systems that dense a lot of information, and advertisement, recommendations, competing calls to action can create cognitive overload for users. This conversation made me question whether there is a norm of how information and technology should be delivered, and especially in some systems prioritizing engagement and consumption over clarity and accessibility. Based on my research and stakeholder discussion, I developed the design question: how can we help UX and UI designers organize research insight without becoming overwhelmed? My goal is not to eliminate research data, but instead we want to redesign how information is organized and presented so that important insights are easier to identify. I wanted my solution to prioritize, reduce cognitive overload, um, prioritizing accessibility, improve insight and organization that creates a more user centered workflow. And I also reviewed UX UI research and professional design sources that relate to cognitive load and dashboard usability within information organization. And according to the laws of UX framework, cognitive load refers to the amount of mental effort required to use a system, and users can only process limited information at once. The article goes on about reducing unnecessary information and simplifying interfaces, um, and can improve usability and help user focus on important tasks. This supports my project because UX researchers often work with excessive amounts of data, and redesigning the process itself can be helpful. Reviewing the dashboard UX research emphasize that effective dashboards should use clear visual hierarchy, grouped information, minimal clutter, processive disclosure, and scannable layouts. The dashboard article explains that clutter systems reduce usability because users struggle to identify important information quickly. Together, these sources help me support the idea that information overload is both usability problems and accessibility problems. During the brainstorming phase, I explore several possible solutions. I dabble in different topics such as brainstorm boards, AI generated summary tools, automation of condensed user interview notes, accessibility tracking and alerts, standards of design interfaces, statistics based data. But eventually, I combined these concepts into a centralized UX research dashboard system that I created rough sketches of and low fidelity concepts that focus on clean hierarchy, minimal clutter, grouped information, search and filtering, accessibility focused in organizations. My architecture background also influenced the way that I approached spatial organization and hierarchy within the interface. For the prototype phase, I used Figma to explore multiple interface concepts based on the research and stakeholder feedback I collected through the project. I prompt and developed two different dashboard ideas that focus on reducing information overload within the UX UI research workflows. The concepts on the left explore a more data heavy interface structure, while the concept on the right focus more strongly on accessibility, hierarchy, and simplifying the user experience. After comparing both concepts, I came to the conclusion that the interface on the right would be my final design direction because it better prioritizes user needs and reduce cognitive overload with a clean organization and more intentional information hierarchy. The final interface was designed using UX research principles related to cognitive load reduction and accessibility. The layout uses grouped insight cards, simplified navigation, filters, categorized information, and it reached the from the research, the laws of UX and dashboard usability studies. It emphasizes that users process information more effectively when content is organized into sections. Accessibility alert systems were also influenced by stakeholder discussion about how accessibility concerns may become overlooked when designers are overwhelmed by excessive information. The final dashboard includes research summary cards, insight clustering, accessibility alerts, priority organization systems, and search and filter tools. Overall, the final interface focuses on clarity, accessibility, usability rather than visual overload, demonstrating how better information organization can support a user centered design decision. Overall, my design attempts to solve the problem. And before I researched that scattered nodes, overwhelming amounts of data, misaccessibility concerns, and difficulty prioritizing insights after implementing a more organized dashboard system, the workflow becomes more structured, easier to navigate, focus on accessibility, and it's efficient for identifying patterns and user needs. Compared the overwhelming digital systems that contain excessive visual clutter and competing information, this dashboard focuses on clarity, hierarchy, and usability. The design demonstrates how information organization itself improves accessibility and focuses on user centered design practices. Reflecting overall what I went through with the project, I was able to connect sociology concepts about cognition and attention with UX and UI workflow challenges. This project helped me realize that design problems are not only technical issues, but also behavioral and psychological. I also think the project successfully connected accessibility with information organization because accessibility can become overlooked when designers are overwhelmed with too much information. One challenge narrowing down the design problem was really hard and still keeping the solution realistic. If I had more time and resources, I would create a higher fidelity interactive prototype, conduct usability testing with UX students and researchers, explore AI assisted tools, and continue improving accessibility tracking systems. Overall, the project allowed me to combine my interests with the interfaces, accessibility, architecture, and information design, all in within one proposal. And these are my references. I was able to use papers from Cognitive Load um, and real life discussions from Reddit. And I was able to paste the class notes from the stakeholder interview. Thank you so much for listening to this video.